Welcome to Stop Overthinking, the podcast for overthinkers, people pleasers, and perfectionists who want to feel calm and confident enough to handle whatever life sends your way. I'm your host, Kristen Odegaard, a women's life and mindset coach, lifelong educator, and recovering perfectionist. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Stop Overthinking podcast. This is episode 21, Living Your Values. This is a topic that I talk about all the time. I've mentioned it in several previous podcast episodes, in many social media posts, and it is such a crucial topic for me that I really wanted it to have its own podcast episode and more in-depth conversation on values and priorities. Values and priorities are one of the first things that clients and I talk about. And what we get into are things like, why does this matter? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Why are you saying what you're saying? How do you show up? And there's several reasons that we have this conversation, especially so early in the coaching process. One of those is to determine the client's level of awareness. For many people, there are so many actions on autopilot that there isn't really any conscious thought as to why you're grinding at work, why you tell people yes when you want to say no, why you keep your thoughts and feelings all bottled up. So it's helpful for me as a coach to see as a starting point and also for the client. But the real reason why I want to help clients identify what they value is if you identify what you value and you live life, make decisions, and take actions from those values and priorities, you will create a life that is valuable to you, a life that you enjoy, a life that you want, a life that makes you feel good. And that's a lot of what I do with coaching. So this process about living out your beliefs and values happens really whether you want to or not. And what we want to do is uncover those thoughts and make them more intentional, because unintentional could be things like valuing other people's opinions. And then you are going to go through feeling less than and unworthy, and that you need to bottle things up and fall into that people-pleasing, lack of boundaries behavior. Sometimes people really value how their body looks, and this can have good or bad connotations. But it might be something where you put more time and effort into your clothing, your workouts, and your nutrition choices, and that is intentional and something that you want. Other times, it can be subconscious and that you're looking for validation and acceptance. It could be things like you really value making money, and your time and effort then is likely to be prioritized with working or endeavors that are lucrative. And those are some really surface examples, and I would say much too vague. For example, why are you focused on making money? What does it bring to you? What feelings are you looking for? Is it success or pride or freedom? And is making money the only way that you can achieve those feelings or those goals? So it's trying to uncover what is there and taking a look at what you say is important and then your actions and how you're living your life and trying to see if those match. And what I found is that so many of my clients and followers are not really living out what they say are their values and their priorities. You may have done some sort of exercise before where maybe it's a professional development sort of a day, or you've seen a quiz online and you narrow it down and these things are important. Or maybe you can rattle off to me that my family is important and that, everything I do is for them. Okay. But most of the time, 2 days later, you've already forgotten what those important things were. And that's where the disconnect is and where people become derailed, essentially. Because if you aren't living into your values and priorities, you likely aren't feeling fulfilled and satisfied and energized about your life. If you're not living into your values, you aren't creating that valuable life that you want and that you deserve. And what happens when you're living separately from those values is you feel out of alignment. Okay. Like, here's where I want to be, but it's some parallel track or maybe even running, you know, completely perpendicular. It creates stress and it can make you feel uncomfortable before doing things, and it can make it difficult for clear decision making. You might try to justify or rationalize decisions. You might feel embarrassed or ashamed about something you've done and try and hide your actions from other people. You might experience guilt or regret about something you've done in the past. You may do things because of social pressure or FOMO, and it wasn't even something that you really wanted to do. All of those things generally stem from kind of being out of alignment with the person that you want to be or that you think you are. And there's even a term for this. It's called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is typically like a psychological stress when people participate in an action that goes against one or more of the ideas, values, or beliefs that they hold. And it's uncomfortable and it leads to feelings of stress and anxiety and guilt or shame. So, like a really common example with this would be say that somebody is, smoking or vaping, and they know that it's unhealthy and that they should stop, and they've had people tell them to stop, and maybe even they've tried, but they keep doing it anyway. We all have little sorts of things in our life that can create that. But when most of your values and priorities are stuck up on a shelf and that's not how you're living, and that your life becomes a matter of cognitive dissonance, that can be really problematic. And that's what I want to help you work through. We want to lessen that in your life so that we are focusing on what really matters. And the only way you can really focus on it is if you know it needs to be conscious, it needs to be intentional. And you have to be deeper than my family is important. My family is my why. I value time with my friends. Like, those concepts are nice, but why does it matter? Why is it important? What do you really want to feel from those types of connections? And that's some of the deeper work. So, with clients, I give them a worksheet of sorts that has like 50 different values or priorities on them, and have them narrow it down initially to like 6 to 8. And then we cut it in half and try and get to 3 to 4, and sometimes even down to one. And you might be familiar with this if you own a business or you work in a business. A lot of times that vision and those value statements, your mission statement, whatever you want to call it, can be, very prevalent and front and center. And this is essentially creating this for your life because, again, it's happening whether you're doing it intentionally or not. And we want to make this be the way you want it to be, to create that value for you. So, I'm going to talk you through a couple of my core values and priorities simply to just talk about the process. And these certainly are not better or more superior to anybody else's values or priorities. You might be not in agreement with where I am, but all I want you to do from this is just to start thinking about how you could apply some of this thinking into your life. And I'll link the worksheet into the podcast notes, or you can certainly Google and do any sort of search for a values and priorities exercise. So some of my top values and priorities that I have gone through are peace, integrity, family, health and wellness, and learning and growing. Okay, not in any particular order right there. And the process that I used for this is very similar to what I described. And this actually took me weeks, if not months, to really narrow this down. And I was doing this at a point in my life 6, 7 years ago when basically everything had blown up. My husband had moved out. I was trying to figure out who I was as an individual, if I was no longer a wife, what it meant to be as a single mother versus, in a partnership that I had been used to, and just really trying to figure out how I was individually going to move forward. You certainly don't need to be at that kind of crisis in your life to do this. In fact, my goal of coaching is to be more proactive so that you don't necessarily get there. So there's no right or wrong time to do this, but it is good to do some check-ins occasionally and make sure that with whatever season of life that you're in, that it still matches up because things will change. So, for me, when I'm talking about family being my priority, I also had to be very clear, like, what does that mean? And at this point in my life, that's me and my kids. That's our family. That is my priority. And that for me, family time and what's important is quality time. It's experiences. It is helping to raise my children to be adults and to have responsibility, and so parenting falls into that for me, and that is something that is really important and that I value. And so when I have decisions coming about for work or volunteer time or things that I filter it through, also, how is this going to impact my family time? Is it going to take away from, a standing activity that we have to do? As a single parent, it had to also look through, like, do my kids need to get someplace? And most of the time it's on me to be able to be the one runner to be able to do those things. And so if I am taking on evening responsibilities or activities or whatever it is, then who was going to be there with the kids or who's going to run those things? So that is a filter that I run a lot of my decisions through, is how is this going to impact my family? The next one for me is health. And this is health and wellness. I've always been an active person and spent 20 years, teaching fitness classes, working as a personal trainer, working as a group fitness instructor, and just prioritizing movement and, like, that sort of thing. It has broadened in the past several years for me in the sense that both of my parents had cancer, and my dad had prostate cancer and is in full remission, and my mom had brain cancer and died from that. So that's something that I take seriously, and the rest of my mom's genes for health and what has been passed down to me isn't great. And so it's important to me to be conscious of what I'm putting in my body, how I'm moving my body. I am also trying to pass that on to my kids about what is a healthy balance of movement, of nutrition, and all of the things filtered out there in terms of things that impact your nervous system and chemicals in our environment. And so that is an interest to me and something else that I take very seriously. I am not I don't drink alcohol as a choice and haven't pretty much for a decade. And that was really a health choice for me. And it's I certainly socialize and I'm with people who do. It's not a judgment call, but that is a decision that I made for myself and my health years ago, and that that works for me. So that is number 2, and something that I prioritize in my life then as well. Another core value of mine is learning and growing. And I'm one of those people where, like, if I could have stayed in college and just kept learning things my whole life, that was fun for me. I love that. Now, how in the world I would have paid for that and, you know, had other responsibility. That's, why ultimately I probably went into education. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in education and education leadership and administration. And I really love learning and knowing new things. It's also how I went into coaching and discovered that as I was learning about relationships and attachment theories and parenting and putting all of these things from my life, working with a coach, the health aspect of it, and then trying to put all of this together and sharing it out there with people. So I love learning and growing. I love sharing that with other people. And so that's just part of who I am, and I geek out about learning different things. I don't like being stagnant, and those are the people that I like to be around as well, the people who also have some of those same interests, who are wanting to level up in some way, and of course, I love being able to share that, and I'm fortunate that I've had various iterations of my career that I'm able to do that and share that and continue that growth as I go. The other 2 that I have are integrity and peace. And integrity for me is acting in value with myself. So it really is kind of the embodiment of all of this that I'm talking about right now, and living that out even when nobody is watching. It's being able to decide on purpose who I want to be and make a conscious effort to do that, and to be able to look back at my life, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and be able to see how I was showing up, and did that match with the best that I knew at that time. And so for me, this is the piece that was really able to help me step out of only showing people certain versions of myself, that perfectionism and high achievement piece. It was where I was able to put myself first or my family first or my health first, and stop some of the, people pleasing types of behaviors or things that seem to be more culturally or socially aligned, but didn't really make sense with me. And so living into that is just really become a core of who I am. And do I do it perfectly? Absolutely not. But then also having the grace to be able to notice that, not beat myself up, and to keep going. And the last value that I'll talk about today is peace. That similar to integrity, but really to me, if I had to choose one, and when I narrow all mine down, it comes down to inner peace. And that only happens when everything else lines up for me. When I know that my family, my health, my personal growth, being the woman that who I want to be, when I'm living like that, I'm feeling calm and at peace. When I'm making decisions, I'm making sure that I'm running it through these filters, because that brings me peace. And ultimately, that is the number one feeling that I want. It's not experiencing joy all the time or excitement or anything. For me, it's peace. That's what I crave. And that's me. Okay. So it doesn't have to be the same for you. So when I was narrowing mine down, like I said, here were kind of my top 5, and if I had to go down to 3, it's peace, family, and health. And then if I'm in one thing for me is peace. And this, in my mind, makes sense because, like I said, it just kind of embodies everything else that I know if all of the other things line up, that it's going to bring me peace. And when things are out of alignment, I don't feel that peace. And it's important to me to get back into that place. So my goal is, as a coach, is to help you see how your conscious and your subconscious thoughts are playing out in your life, helping you to be more intentional in choosing which thoughts, beliefs, values, priorities you want and what that looks like and how to live them out. And if you're not in harmony with where you want to be, I want to help you create a process that will work for you to move towards that in your thoughts and actions. And one of the biggest pieces that I see and that I had to come to terms with in my own life, notice with those values that I had, nowhere there was I talking about how much I love to work or that my job is my most important thing. And yet, for many of us, that job, earning money, those kinds of things take a huge amount of our time and our energy. And so for me and for many of my clients, then it becomes, how do we reconcile this thing that takes up such a significant part of our day and our brain power when maybe it's we're not even talking about loving it, but it just simply, isn't one of your top 5 priorities. And again, I'll tell you how this works for me. And my my job for me is a job. It's something that's necessary for the resources that I need in order to provide for my family, to take care of myself and my health, and the tools and resources to be able to continue learning and growing. Okay. Now, my job as part in all of the different roles that I have provided, I like in the sense of I'm helping other people learn and grow as well. So it does kind of fill in there. But I'm also able to recognize that when it comes down to job versus family, my family is going to win out. And I'm very fortunate that I have been able to create a role and make that work because it's really important to me. And I have spent years cultivating that. And so when I'm working with clients and they're maybe just starting on this journey, and they may discover that their work life is really stressful and burning them out, and it's not a priority, but yet somehow it's taking up so much time and energy. But maybe they need the financial resources. Then we get to work in terms of what else in your life is working in terms of your values and priorities. Where is your job perhaps filling these needs that you're maybe not recognizing? But then it's also some new thinking to be able to let go of putting the stress and the responsibility and all the things that you bring home from this, and to be able to release some of that. Because when you are more in tune with what's really valuable, what's really important for you, it's it's just easier because you're filling that with your time and your energy, and not letting your life dictate how you're filling your time. Instead, it's like putting the big rocks in the jar first. Here are my values and my priorities. I'm going to fill it in with the smaller stuff. And often, as clients are coming to work with me, that has just gotten out of balance, where the things that should be fillers have become the big rocks. And so we need to dump it all out and kind of start over again. And that involves how to think about things differently, because sometimes it seems really hard to let go of because it's always been there, or that other people have told me that this is really important, or that I've always really cared about what my parents think about my choices. And how do I deal with the feelings of knowing that I'm going to do something for me that maybe they aren't going to like? So there's all different kinds of examples and ways that this is going to show up in your life. And that's what we do in coaching. So we're going to hone in on those values and priorities, what's important, and then take a look at how is this playing out in your life? If you have things that are really important to you and that you would say are like the top 3 priorities in your life, and you are spending 1 hour a week on that, we maybe need to look at how to put that more into your life, because then you will experience more joy. It will feel more valuable. It's the life that you want instead of just reacting to what's handed to you. So I hope this gave you more insight into this process. I'm going to link an exercise that I use. It's a something public that you can find anywhere. So I will link that. I am also going to link back to a podcast I did earlier on called the Attention Audit. And that is after you have done some of this values work, that you start taking a look at how you spend your time, and that you can align your values and your priorities with how you are spending your time, because that's the next step in the process. And the more that you are in tune with your values, the easier it becomes to make decisions. It's not so much of this giant chore to please other people when you know what you need and what you value. And if that lines up with other people, great. And if it doesn't, you're okay with releasing them. It makes it so much easier to have boundaries that protect yourself, your time, your energy, your financial resources, because this is what's important to you. And the other stuff is just fillers, and you don't get as stressed about it. So I really encourage you to go through this process, whether it's individually, working with a coach. It can be a great exercise to go through if you have a partner, and to do this separately, but then also to talk about what does it mean? Because so often, like again, when I was just starting out at the beginning there, like family is really important. Okay, great. Two people, even if you're married, or great friends or whoever, whatever that relationship is, you might have very different definitions of what family means, what that looks like, what it sounds like, and how that is lived out on a day-to-day basis. So these are great things that you can journal about, that you can have conversations about. It is great for reconnecting in relationships, and also reconnecting with that relationship with yourself. What do I need? What do I want? What do I value? And how do I bring this into my life? So lots to think about with this. I encourage you to set some time and start the process. It is a process, it's ongoing. You can take weeks, you can take months to really hone in on what matters to you so you can create a life that is valuable. Have a great week.